How's it going, everyone? So, what I'm going to be talking about today is the recent announcement made by BJ Penn, where he stated that he's coming out of retirement to compete at 145 pounds in the featherweight division. And I'm just going to kind of give you my thoughts here. It's not really going to be too in depth, but I'm going to just kind of throw out my 2 cents. So, basically, BJ Penn is now coming out of retirement, and he's 37 years old. He has a record of 16, 10, and 2. He was a two-divisional champion, welterweight and lightweight. He was, one of your stereotypical prototypes of what MMA fighters will and should become. He was kind of a pioneer in that regard, where he had great ground, he had good stand-up, his wrestling was on par. In my opinion, this guy, he's over the hill. Like, no offense to BJ or anything like that. He's just past his prime. I think if he's going into the cage with guys who are like 22, 23, who grew up, fighting MMA throughout their entire career, not really just having one aspect of the MMA game to rely on, like stand-up, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever have you, he's going to be fighting guys who have everything and who honestly put it together a lot better than BJ probably does. So I'm not saying BJ doesn't have a chance to make a career resurgence. We've definitely seen that happen before. But I think that's becoming more and more of a rarity. I think these guys coming out of retirement who kind of were trailblazers, who kind of pathed the way for younger guys to come along in the MMA game, I don't think it's going to be happening more and more. I think as the game kind of catches up, as you see these guys who are 22, 23 years old, who are basically growing up in the sport of MMA, who learn jiu-jitsu, who learn wrestling, who learn striking as a complete package, I don't really like BJ's chances. Now, he does have some options. I know he's been in the media kind of going back and forth with Nick Lentz, but I really don't see Nick Lentz coming down to featherweight. One of the reasons why he fights at lightweight right now is because he had a lot of health issues making that cut to featherweight. So to convince him to go down to featherweight, I mean, I would assume you'd have to pay him a lot of money. He's risking his health, and we don't all really know how severe his health issues were when he was fighting at featherweight as to what really made him decide to go back to lightweight. I mean, he could have been on his deathbed or something, like failing, his kidneys could be failing. Like, you don't know the severity of it all, so he might not even take the payday if they offered it to him. Now, BJ Penn, the UFC's obviously going to bring him back and say, yeah, if you're coming out of retirement, we'll get you a fight, because he is a big name. He does carry a lot of weight when it comes towards bringing eyeballs to a pay-per-view. He's like the pride of Hawaii, which, besides Max Holloway, really hasn't had anyone since. So yeah, I get the reasons why BJ is coming out of retirement. He's more of a guy who fights to compete. He doesn't really need the money as some of the older fellas who one person comes to mind is Mark Holman, right? This was a guy who needed money, who was fighting long past his prime days. He was fighting into his late 40s, early 40s, something like that. He was just putting his body on the line because he needed the money. It wasn't so much that he thought he could win a title. And that's kind of the opposite with BJ. BJ doesn't really need the money, and he thinks he can win the title. So I get that, but I still think BJ has that mentality where he believes he's the best in the world. And I'm not going to say any fighter shouldn't have that, but you should definitely know your limitations, especially when coming out of retirement to put your body on the line. So I don't think this is going to be good for BJ. I mean, I'll watch. I'm not going to lie. See BJ Penn compete again is definitely something that interests me. But, I mean, his fights against Frankie Edgar, I mean, the first fight, I thought BJ won. I'm not going to lie. I thought he beat Frankie. I thought that decision went Frankie's way was kind of a luck sort of judge call, whatever you have it. The second fight against Frankie battered him. I thought that was a good sign where BJ's skills were starting to decline. Then he came back, his victory over Matt Hughes, he KO'd him. That's where I thought he should have retired. I thought that was the fight. He got his victory over Matt Hughes. He kind of settled that grudge, and he's leaving on a win. But in typical BJ fashion, that wasn't where it ended, right? He came back, he fought John Fitch to a draw, which a lot of people thought was a gift. And then he lost 3 in a row. I mean, Nick Diaz battered BJ, Rory McDonald battered BJ, and Frankie Edgar nearly murdered BJ. So I don't know who they're going to give him. They have to give him someone with a little bit of name value because it is BJ Penn. But if he loses, I mean, it just further tarnishes his legendary UFC career. He was one of the first big names, the first money draws the UFC ever had, and I don't like it. I don't like it when you see guys come out of retirement and put their health on the line like this, especially when they don't really have anything to gain, and the actual probability of them making a title run and winning the title is extremely, extremely thin. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. This is what I thought. I wanted to say some things on it. BJ Penn coming back, it's an interesting thing. It's definitely going to be one that people will watch. But unless he puts 2 wins in a row together, like I don't think it's going to be good for his career. I don't think it's going to be good for his legacy. I think BJ Penn kind of established him as the guy at lightweight. Everyone who in that division kind of wants to mimic. They want to be as successful as BJ. And he did win the welterweight title, and he did win the lightweight title, so he does have that claim to like a 2 divisional champion. Like I think him, Randy Couture, and I'm probably forgetting someone else, but I think there's one other. But still, like he does have his accomplishments, and I think if he comes back and he fights and he loses again, I mean that's horrendous. And once you make that commitment to come out of retirement, I don't know if one loss for someone like BJ would be enough to discourage him from continue fighting. So I could see him having 2 more fights, and if he loses them both, I mean, it's kind of sad. Like, it's one of those guys who just wants to compete, but his body's no longer in it, right? So I'm hoping that BJ comes back and maybe even gets a win. Even though I was never really a big BJ Penn fan, I've always been like a hardcore GSP fan. So when GSP and BJ Penn had their huge fight go down, their lightweight champion versus welterweight champion, I mean, that whole drama there, I was very much in the corner of GSP, so you can understand that I'm a little biased when it comes to the BJ. But at the same time, I don't want to see someone who has actually done a lot for his sport take such a big hit to their legacy. So I'll be watching. I'll be interested to see how it plays out. I don't know who they're going to give him. If it's like I could see them pushing for Nick Lentz, but if BJ's set on featherweight and Lentz is set on lightweight, I don't think it'll happen. If you're looking to actually make him into a contender, I don't know who you give him. Maybe Cub Swanson. That wouldn't be a bad fight. I wouldn't. Maybe Jeremy Stevens. Someone who has a name, but some credibility, but isn't ranked like top 5. Someone who won't batter BJ in his fight back. Because I mean, let's be honest. He's been off since July 2014. It was a beatdown at the hands of Frankie Edgar. I mean, before that, it was 2012 he fought in against Rory. So it's not like he's been active. I mean, you never really know what he's doing outside of the gym, but unless you're fighting consistently, I'm a strong believer in ring rust. So I guess my overall opinion on this issue is that it's a bad decision for BJ to come back, but it's one I'll definitely watch and I'll definitely tune in, as I'm sure many of you will. Anyways, as always, keep it real. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Later.